and the swallow a nest for herself, where she may lay her young. In your altars, my King and my God. How lovely is your dwelling place, O Lord, mighty God, Lord of all. Blessed are they whose dwelling is your own, Lord of peace. Blessed are they, refreshed by springs and by rain, when dryness daunts and scathes. Behold my shield, my King and my God. Lovely is your dwelling place, O Lord, mighty God, Lord of all. I would forsake 1,000 other days anywhere, if I can spend one day in your courts, belong to you alone. My strength are you alone, my glory, my King and my God. Is your dwelling place, O Lord, mighty God, Lord of all. How lovely your dwelling place, O Lord, mighty God, Lord of all.
Good morning po to our dear teachers and a blessed Sunday to all of you. Welcome to our fourth and final session today. So today po half day lang po tayo, and I hope you are already well rested and refreshed from our two sessions yesterday, which were both fun. Morning session po yesterday, we have our morning filled with experiment ideas, lab work ideas from Michelle, all the way from South Korea. She's teaching now at Seoul Foreign School in South Korea. So marami po sa atin na mahilig sa Korean novela, yan ang ating dream destination. So just a few reminders po for today. Before we start with the morning session is, of course, accomplishment of the assessment tool to be submitted through the submission bin posted on our FB group page. Ang ating pong deadline para dyan ay tomorrow po, 5 p.m. So bigyan po natin ng time. So alam po natin marami tayong mga errands on a Sunday and our, of course, religious obligations and family obligations. So bigyan ko po kayo ng time hanggang tomorrow po, 5 p.m. Of course, the accomplishment of the post-test self-assessment. So by now po, dapat tapos na natin yung pre-test, no? Before session 1 po dapat yun. Meron din pong ka-active at the post-test self-assessment yun. Kindly accomplish that after session 4. And then there is, of course, the program evaluation tool that will be uploaded also on the FB group page. This is to evaluate the whole run of the program from sessions 1 to 4. And of course, of our attendance for session 4. So sana po na-accomplish natin lahat ng mga yan before we start with this morning session. Yun pong presentation ni Dr. Silva from yesterday afternoon. We will upload it po as soon as she sends it to us. Google Drive po kasi yun, so marami siyang pinangako na i-share sa atin, so she's still compiling them. Anyways po, even after the program, you can still access the FB group page, and doon po yung repository natin ng mga materials natin. Ma'am Michelle already updated hers, so you can access some of the materials that she promised us. So check nyo na lang po sa kanyang Google Drive. And Dr. Silva will send her shortly. As she said yesterday, she's going to travel. She was going to travel right after the session. So pagbalik po niya ng Baguio, I'm sure she will send it to us and we will upload it on our FB group page. Okay, let me introduce to you our session for this morning. This is the fourth and final session. It's science teaching from an outcomes-based and contextualized approach in an online modular context or face-to-face, of course, as we have gone back to our classrooms. This session aims to demonstrate how teachers can align lessons, activities, and outputs using the OBE framework. Furthermore, it seeks to improve existing OBE practices by integrating best practices from the traditional and contextual teaching pedagogy. Our expected learning outcomes for this final session: to develop a deeper understanding of OBE principles and contextualization, to design lessons, modules, teaching materials that integrate the traditional, creative, and the innovative pedagogy with the end goal of achieving target learning competencies. Of course, we also have assessment for this session. This is the final assessment. For proficient teachers, you're asked, what are the challenges of implementing the OBE framework and contextualization for teaching science? So I think medyo na-discuss din po natin yesterday yung contextualization with Doc Dot's session in the afternoon. So this morning, Sir Roy will further elaborate on this. For the highly proficient teachers, you're asked to respond to the question, what strategies can be effectively used to address perceived challenges to the implementation of OBE and contextualization? And of course, to help us achieve the learning outcomes and respond to our assessment questions, we have with us this morning Sir Roy. Sir Roy Asignacion earned his BSed specializing in science and technology from the St. Louis University, his MA and in science education from DMMSU, and is now pursuing his PhD in science education, also at St. Louis University. He's a certified trainer for science teachers from grades 7 to 10. He also served as consultant for grades 7 to 9 science textbooks. Sir Roy is presently teaching in the St. Louis University Senior High School in Baguio City. Let's welcome our resource speaker for this morning, Sir Roy. Good morning, Sir Roy.
Maulang umaga, Ma'am Ria, and I do
Maulang
hope that
umaga
my
din po sa inyo dyan.
audio is clear all the way from the mountains of Sablan, Benguet. And to our dear participants, we are so blessed, happy, and excited to have you for our last session. Looking at the number, it is truly very promising, and we do hope we can give enough justice despite the weather condition. And once again, to our teachers, new teachers, seasoned teachers, what the topic mentioned by Ma'am Ria is actually in line with the transition we are having right now from the pre-pandemic to the pandemic of 2 years, and of course our shift to modified or limited learning or face-to-face learning on the very approach of science. Surely you have a lot of stories to share, but on my end, for 2 hours at most, we are to deliver a guide on how we can guarantee that as to our delivery for science education, though virtual for some aspect, and we already shift to the usual face-to-face, we can still recall what we have been giving to our learners with the aid of technology or with the aid of the usual materials or learning materials we are having. We can still promote what is expected of us, being science educators. And to be ready with my presentation, okay, let's see. So kindly share with Sir Roy your thumbs up reaction if you can already see my screen and that my audio is clear. Let me see from our more than 150 participants there. At least I am able to see that the transition of my audio and my presentation is clear. And We hope and pray that this transition would be as smooth as possible despite the challenges we are having right now. Thank you so much, my dear teachers. And from this session, as mentioned by Ma'am Ria, we are into the outcomes-based and contextualized approach in an online or modular context. Let us let us have a simple poll. This time let us use our chat box. For our chat box, um, please reply modules if you are still using your modules right now despite the implementation of limited face-to-face. Again, to our co-educators, kindly chat in our chat box the word modules if you are still utilizing your module despite the transition to limited face-to-face. There, your module responses are coming in. You count me also that as to our school, the modules we have been working for 2 years during the pandemic is still being utilized. And in fact, part of our realization, it is very useful that we continue to update and upgrade our modules because there are still some instances where our learners are requested to be on isolation or quarantine because of some symptoms. Others were indeed tested for for the virus, but while the others, because of their flu symptoms, they have been requested by our physician not to attend school. Thus, they have to work on their lessons through the modules that have been uploaded by the teachers per subject in the corresponding learning management system. So here it is. I can see your responses and we will try to reflect on what we have been developing because up to this date, every time there's the need for us to input something as part of our module, we can always update it. Thus, modules for first semester, for example, being a senior high school faculty, the modules for first semester, of course, were the priority. And before the end of the first semester, come December, the teachers are already expected to review and update our second semester module so that come second semester by January, we can already upload our modules in the via LMS. So at this point, we will reflect on the use of these modules and its content, like a part of your module where students are to perform some experiments, part of the module where students are expected to answer um, the essential question delivered by the teacher. So alongside with the module, we are already expected to deliver lessons face to face. So the question is, can we still use the following approaches, outcomes-based and contextualized approaches, though we are already under the face-to-face modality? So that's the question. So at this point, as an essential question was raised here through our screen, what is your target outcome for our learners? Okay, please remember this question because I am going to show you a short clip wherein we are asked as an educator, what is our expectation or target outcome for our learners in the elementary, our learners in junior or even senior high school. Probably some of you are also educators in the tertiary level. So for a while, let me first stop my screen, dear teachers, because I need to make sure that my audio has been clicked on as well, so that you can hear it. Click share sound there. All right. So that's the video entitled El Empleo, the employment in English. When I watched this end part of the video, I asked myself, can it survive for 8-hour duty being the doormat? Okay. So that's the real question. Now let's go back. Let's go back with our presentation, where our presentation says, what if, what is our target outcome for our learners? Anyone? Yes, let's use our chat box. What is our target outcomes to our learners? Being a basic ed teacher or a teacher of higher education? Based from what we watched, El Empleo, what is our target outcomes with our learners or for our learners? Expectations of our learners, what we dream of them. Okay, there, Teacher Cyrus, to internalize the things that we teach. There, internalization. What could be a possible evidence of internalization? What are some indicators that they know how to internalize, Teacher Cyrus? So what else? Thank you for your immediate response. There, thank you. Ayun, may immediate sagot ka agad. Change in character. That's why we have this tagline in our school. Character makes a person. To survive in life's journey through our teaching, life skills. And what else? From Davao, lifelong learning, relate learning to real life situation. Relate learning to real life situation, that's already part of our theme, right? When it comes to contextualize approach. To provide productive learners with character, that's very true. And the simple word, according to Teacher Michelle, respect. Thank you. To apply in their daily life for survival. I do hope that we can go beyond the survival instinct, right? That from the survival, we can also opt for being an essential member of the community. Because when you say essential, the sense of involvement is there. Sign of being successful, lifelong learner, there to practice what we teach, then to be of service, holistic formation, to live meaningfully, and also to be able to apply learnings to real life. Teacher Jocelyn, character formation, how to survive in the future, apply the concepts to daily life. So beyond what we expect them to be, like to graduate in the basic ed or senior high school, to finish college, and to pick the course of their choice, because eventually they would become employees. Some of them, those who are into business, would also be employers, and that's where our sense of um, being able to be of service through the employers would be targeted as well. That's why we also have another response. Our target outcome for our learners is to become a productive citizen in a way that they can apply what we teach in school in real life situations so that they can survive in every challenges that they will encounter as they grow and encounter more responsibilities. That's very true, because in the future we want them to be ready. Teacher Joyce, globally competitive citizen, better and productive persons in the work field. So better would mean there is meaning to their work, and that our pupils, our learners, will not only give priority to what they receive during salary days. Okay? And according to teacher Anafe, being an elementary teacher, of course, is for the learner who can read, write, and comprehend. I think you've seen through social media what is the target adjustment to be done by the Department of Education, especially in the number of subjects in the basic ed or probably in the elementary, right? Reading, writing, and there's a comment I read, how about science? That's the comment posted by one of the one of the follower of that page. Reading, writing, there's another R for arithmetic, and the question is how about science? Then lastly, to let them know how important learning is, there, such as science, inventions, machinery are really important. There you are. So see, one video as part of a teacher's lesson with a very effective essential question or guide question is something that will never fade. Meaning, regardless of the advancement of technology, regardless of the use of social media, a short message coming from a video which our learners can relate to can already give an indicator how well they have received the message and how well they can show evidences of learning. So, for example, if we show them a picture of, let's say, being in Benguet, I would like to contextualize my example. I would show a picture of the strawberry field in La Trinidad, Benguet. However, it is submerged in water because of the heavy rain. So from that aspect, can ask my learners, what are some of the reasons why our famous strawberry field have been submerged in water? If our lesson in general biology 1 has something to do with environmental concerns. And probably on the part of other social aspect, up to what extent are we to promote development? Because the development happening in Benguet, particularly in famous towns for tourism like La Trinidad, Atok, there's already a shift, and there's also a question whether um, the work, or if not the source of income through agriculture like Baguio vegetables or highland vegetables, as well as flowers, would be balanced just to accommodate better tourism um, income. So those are some examples that I would like to share with you. Okay, not only through videos and pictures. So that is in relation to considering lessons on our contextualized approach as well as outcomes based. Later would be more examples with regard to outcomes based. So now there's something that we would like to share into. Let us first consider, let us consider this code. Let's start with letter A first. Let's start with letter A. Looking at the instruction of Sir Roy, I am using my pointer right now through your laptop or through your, let me first stop my share screen so that I can share the link. Okay, for a while. Share screen so that we can be more interactive. Here. All right, here. Resharing. I did not yet click my slideshow because I would like to copy the link for you. This is the first one, and I will share it through the chat box. There. That's the first link with regard to the Mentimeter. And when you click the link from our chat box, you are asked for the code. Okay, the code is here. 68238403. There. So the first is the link that Roy sent. The second one is the code. Kindly click first the link, and then once you are in the page, you would be asked about the 8-number code. Please input 68238403. All
Four, three,
right.
one.
So now I shifted to another tab, and let's see if we already for a while.
What is the best word that would describe assessment to this new? Okay, word. I don't know.
Okay, so yes, Teacher Charmaine, word po ang needed, sir. So voting closed. So let me recheck that so that we can still work on it. At least you are already at that page.
Enter another word.
Yes po. So let's check on the voting. Ayan. Para makita natin kung okay na siya. Sayang naman kung hindi nyo mai-input yung inyong vote there. All right. So
Close
from
pa
this,
din po.
yes po.
It's closed po.
Yes, ma'am. Working on it po. Okay. So here, I already opened it again. Let's try. Please let me know again via chat box if it's already working. Okay. I am already receiving your answers. There. Thank you. Responses are coming in live. Okay na po. Thank you for updating, Sir Roy. Let's just give the others 3 more minutes so that more responses would come in. So this time, as part of our outcomes-based approach, is also an essential component, and that is on assessment. With what we have experienced from due to the pandemic, we have to consider also what could have been done with regard to the assessment. Remember, because of the pandemic, for 2 years, from the Department of Education, they said that we have to put on hold first on examination. Although there were still some schools, especially private schools, who opted to give quarterly assessment or examination. Yan, ang bilis na po. 1 more minute. Ang ganda ng pagbuo ng ating word cloud because of we have a good number of participants and others are already getting used to the idea of using the link there, and from the link they are given the option to input their responses. All right, so from this initial input, I would like to request at least 2 participants, for those who can unmute themselves, 2 participants to mention to us the top 1 and top 2 best word in relation to assessment in this new normal of education. Any volunteer to give us a comment based on what you saw from the word cloud of the top 1 and top 2 with
Challenging.
regard to the best word.
Challenging, difficult.
Challenging and difficult po.
Thank you, Teacher Grace. Teacher Grace, kindly expound further. Why do you think that a lot of the teachers mentioned about the word challenging, then later followed by Teacher Michael? Go ahead, Teacher Grace.
Challenging in a sense that there are some lessons that we did not expand it well or explain or expound it well to the children, but then they undergone that kind of assessment, and somehow for us as teacher we are challenged on how to um, how are you going to make an intervention regarding that learning towards our learners.
That's very true. Not only that we have a limited time, our learners do not have equal access to the learning materials. Some are not very comfortable with the virtual learning, while the others are not used to the use. Our other learners are not used to modules when it comes to lesson delivery. Teacher Michael, go ahead.
Yes, po. Good morning, sir. Should I choose other word or the same word?
Go ahead, Teacher Michael, your choice.
All right. Well, I think yung assessment natin for the new normal is like it's a bit uh what do you call this, and unreliable in a sense that the students were not able to get enough knowledge on uh, with regards to with regards to the teaching and learning process. So I don't think the result be assess the students' performance for that matter because there's no based on my experience. This is based on my experience. So I think the result is unreliable. It's not reliable, right? Is also compromised since there is a gap between the students of learning and the teachers rendering the lesson. Um, for the new normal, it's very difficult for everybody, for the teacher, for the students. So I think the assessment for the new normal is unreliable and the quality is being compromised. That's for me, sir.
Thank you so much, Teacher Michael, for your input. Let's also listen to Teacher Anape, followed by Teacher Milgrace. They are the last two to share. Thank you.
Hello, good morning everyone. Good morning, sir. So for me, assessment as of this time is too high tech but too difficult. In a sense that not everyone has an internet connection, especially those far-flung areas. But most of the assessment as of this time is through online platform. Thus, everyone cannot easily access it. Not only the learners, also the teachers. So, nahihirapan talaga, sir, lalo na dito sa amin in a province na hindi lahat ng school ay naaabot ng signal. So, it's high-tech and it's difficult. That would be all. Thank you.
That's very true, Teacher Anape. In fact, all teachers and learners are experiencing the same scenario for 2 years. Teacher Milgrace?
Hi, good morning, sir. Good morning to my
Morning.
fellow teachers. Um, Based on the words given in the cloud words poster, I would choose it's challenging, since based on the first quarter observation as we start our school year 2022-2023 opening of classes, I, as a teacher, find it very challenging on our part since we are experiencing a transition of learning for our students from modular to face-to-face. And during face-to-face classes, we adopted limited face-to-face first before we go into the full face-to-face classes. And it's very challenging for us teachers as we um, our day-to-day experience with our students, since it is uh, they have a 2 year modular. Since it is in that situation, our students find it really hard to cope up with the topic that we discuss. So as a teacher, we need to go down to their level, and possibly hindi na siya nami-met ng subject for today, because the teacher need to go back to the very basic one, especially in math, very basic. So the teacher needs to adjust themselves, especially the objectives of the day, because the objectives in the MELCs would not be achieved because of the learning capacity of the students due to the transition of the learning, so transition of classes. So it is very challenging for us teachers po. That would be all, sir.
Hello po, teacher. Nawala po kayo.
Po.
Teacher Mildred.
Yes po, narinig po ako, ma'am.
Ayan na po, naririnig na po kayo.
Okay po, I will just repeat my answer. So for me po, I would choose challenging, because since we are adapting a new normal and there is a transition of learning from modular to limited face-to-face, it is very challenging for us teachers to meet between the distance of the students who find it hard, very difficult for the new topics that they will encounter. We find it very hard, especially in coping up with the objectives given for the day, because the teachers need to, to go back to their very basics, especially in mathematics and science, because they were modular classes. Find modular classes po, nahihirapan sila, or they have limited knowledge on the subject matter. So pagdating ng face to face, nahihirapan silang maintindihan at ma-connect yung mga bagong lessons, because during the modular stage or modular time, hindi nila masyadong naiintindihan, or they have a less learning during that time po. So the teacher find it very challenging for everyday lessons, because hindi mamimet yung objectives of the day, because the teacher needs to go down to the level of the learning of the students, and kailangan pa ni teacher na ma-fill in yung gap before mo magbigay ng bagong lesson po. That would be all, ma'am.
Very well said, Teacher Mildred. And everyone, let's give each other the clap reaction, because we already have felt what all our teachers have experienced for more than 2 years. Imagine, third quarter of the academic year came the pandemic, and from there we are expected to shift from the materials and the way we can contact our learners. Good thing there's Facebook, good thing there's Messenger. And then the others, they were blessed because they already have their LMS, while the others, they would start from scratch. And from that shift, we are again expected to create very promising modules. But then there is limited training for teacher material development through the modules. And came next academic year, ang dami na namang mga nire-require sa atin, especially attendance to webinars. That's why there are also a lot of health aspects that are consequential in terms of this kind of learning and teaching modality. And still, we opted to deliver. And thank you, dear teachers, for this wonderful sharing we had with you. And I appreciate your input, because this would really validate our topic with regard to contextual approach, as well as um, outcomes-based approach. And then to continue, let's have this as well before I click my share or slideshow button. I will again prepare through the chat box another link. Sir Roy chose to utilize varied learning applications or teaching applications so that you can experience it yourself. If you believe, you can try it as well. And together with your learners, you can experience the wonder of technology. So again, through the chat box, the first link is about another teaching learning app, Nearpod. And then once you have clicked on the link, you are again asked for a code. And the code is HXZB2. So I'm giving you time again to click on the link. It is shared by a chat box followed by the code. So if Sir Roy will open it for the group, we are led to the page created by Sir Roy using the Nearpod. By the way, this teaching learning resource is free because I chose the basic um, basic level. When we say basic level, there is limited as to the features. There is also limitation with regard to the materials that you can save because there is only limited memory or the number of bytes. So now, for those who are using their laptop, for those who are using their gadget, I do hope that you can scroll, especially laptop and desktop, with your mouse. You can actually scroll our virtual field trip today because it's our first time. Sige nga, sino yung mga kasama ni Sir Roy? Sino ang mga kasama ni Sir Roy na first time sa Boracay? Bigyan nyo nga ako ng puso. Pusoan natin ang Boracay dahil bagamat may bagyo, sineneng ba ang ating bagyo ngayon? Mag-scroll tayo. Ayan. Ginagamit ko na ang aking mouse. Class, we are along the shore of the famous Boracay. And the weather in the island is favorable for us. It's not so sunny. Thus, strolling along the shore, may tumatawa na. Strolling along the shore is very exciting and memorable. Don't forget to use your sunscreen. There you are. So, this is actually advantageous if you are using your laptop and your desktop through your mouse. Okay? So, from here, let's proceed to the next part. Sorry. Of course, it's my honor to bring you to Boracay, teacher. I am already, I am being warned of my, for a while, battery. So later, expect me to shift from my laptop to there. Yan. And another site would be this one. Open Navigator. Okay, there. Okay, the preview for what? Scrolling. I hope this will work in our favor para hindi lang dalawang site, my dear teachers, dalawang site ang prepare ni Sir Roy eh. Okay, let's reload it so that you can visit also the second site. Ayan. Come on. For a while. Let me reconnect. Okay. So the purpose of this material is for us to get used to other technologies that will introduce our lesson, or if not, to process our lessons. And one of which is through the use of virtual field trip. The virtual field trip, we can also be guided through virtual museums, virtual laboratory, or virtual experiment, right? And from here, we can also proceed to other parts of our material. So how come I cannot, uh, I hope this would work. The different pages should already be with us. Hmm. Ito lang yung challenge dito. Or let me close it first. Probably. Okay. There. Sa connection po natin. Let's go back to that link later, okay? So that we can continue to address the concern. Ang problem dito, ayan. Let's go. There. So let me first redo that and prioritize the other part of the topic. So with the limited connect or the battery source, I would shift later to my smartphone to continue with my delivery, okay? Don't worry, we will go back to our virtual field trip later. Hopefully, the Nearpod site will already cooperate. And what is expected now for our presentation is to target the following objectives. First one, we can um, show and share alignment of lessons, activities, and outputs using the outcomes-based approach. There's nothing new that you have to recall. Dear teachers, you just have to remember your teaching load for the previous years, especially during this pandemic, and what were the topics that you have been delivering with your learners, which you believe are very interesting for them. Yung talagang tumatak sa kanila from the activity, from the manner of delivery, and from the result of assessment. Surely there would be topics which you are very confident that your learners would love to redo even and to tell their experiences if they are asked about it. Okay, so that's our reference later on. At the same time, to improve existing outcomes-based education practices by integrating contextual learning styles based approach. And third is to determine the area of balance in terms of content delivery for distance learning education. I still have included distance learning education because despite the shift to limited face-to-face, there would always be a day, two, or a week even, if there are some emergencies wherein the delivery would be through distance learning. Again, that's why modules are still in place, LMS are still being used. So that if they would say 1 week quarantine or isolation and it involves a class maybe or probably several sections, it will not cause a massive stop or delay in the lesson. So here it is. One example, we go back to the pandemic, but as science educators, we should remember that the COVID-19 is not the very first pandemic that we have encountered, but the question is where and how will science educators um, deliver additional roles aside from teaching about pandemic. It says here that past pandemics can point to not only the development of scientific explanation in time, but also the societal context that harbored them. I am relating this to societal context because even today, 2023, 2022, 2023, there are still group of people who do not believe in vaccines. There are still people who do not believe of the existence of pandemic. Similarly, groups of people who do not believe in um, greenhouse effect or global warming. So despite the education of being the torch or light or source of wisdom, we cannot control other groups who will cast doubt of what is happening. And sadly, there are really those who follow them or believers. Question is, how did science education make or break our consciousness with regard to COVID-19? With the number of deaths, especially our loved ones, especially our frontliners, like Spanish flu before thousands died, and so with COVID-19, um, this is how we can reflect on our role. If there is the chance that we can mention about factual information about the pandemic, about the virus, that is much appreciated on our part if we can relate that as part of our lesson. So what is being balanced here? The current pandemic is to set a backdrop of growing mistrust in science, sometimes deliberately promoted for political ends. For instance, as is the case of climate change denial. Trump, as an example, is one of those who do not truly believe of the existence of climate change. That's why partly he was against the budget increase for projects for climate change. That's why a lot of Americans also questioned his stand because they do not they cannot comprehend why will a country leader be unconvinced with regard to climate change. Now the question is, how well was he informed? And who were his advisors? Does he have researchers there? Does he have science teachers? How well can he remember his lessons in science and so on? There is an unprecedented need to educate the future scientists as well as the general public. That is where we will come in engaging not only in evidence-based reasoning and critical thinking, but also in action-oriented and socially responsible citizenship. So with our own respective classes, that is the maximum thing that we can relate ourselves into so that the general public will be well informed. And if they are well informed because of the pandemic and how they can protect their family, how can they protect themselves, the use of masks, the use of sanitizers, and the use of boosters, this would already have a chain effect in making sure that it will greatly reduce the number of casualties if we are referring it to the number of deaths we have in the Philippines. Now, in line with science education, there is also the important role of outcomes-based education, especially with regard to curriculum, instruction, and approaches. Now, my question, dear teachers, let us again use our chat box, or I can accommodate those who would be raising their hand. Between the three, curriculum, instruction, and assessment, which of the three is you believe the most important and should be given priority as an educator? And I would appreciate if you could give your explanation. Between the three, which do you think should be given more priority considering our new normal of lesson delivery? Others can also raise their hand if they want. The very first, Teacher Julito said assessment, Teacher Florenda, instruction, Teacher Michael mentioned about curriculum, Teacher Jotham mentioned about instruction, Teacher James, curriculum, Teacher Robel, curriculum. From Davao Occidental, assessment, Teacher June Ann, curriculum, Teacher Maricel, instruction, Teacher Jubilin, curriculum. Teacher Grace, instruction. Instruction, curriculum, curriculum. Ayan, valid. But it appears that from the responses we get from the chat box, there's no one yet who mentioned, ayun, meron na. From the user iPhone, curriculum, then instruction, and assessment will follow. Thank you so much, teacher iPhone. Okay. So you made your own ranking. That was your approach. Teacher Sherlyn, instruction. Anyone who can unmute themselves and give us an explanation why of the three you chose one, and what could be your reason? Why did you go for curriculum? Why did you go for instruction or assessment? Teacher Vanessa, curriculum and the two will follow. We cannot give instruction and assessment if we do not have curriculum. Okay, assuming of course that we do have our K to 12 curriculum. We now have a colleague, a co-teacher, Teacher Myra. Go ahead, Teacher Myra.
Yes po, good morning.
Morning.
Yeah, I chose po curriculum because as we all know, our mode of instruction and assessment is being mandated by naman po ni DepEd and CHED. So we as teachers, once the curriculum is being laid down na ni CHED and ni DepEd, we as teachers have different styles or mode of instruction and the assessment that we will adapt depende po sa learning styles po ng ating mga students. That's from my own opinion po. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Teacher Myra. So that is our anchor. According to Teacher Myra, our anchor is our curriculum as prescribed by the Department of Education for the basic ed and of course higher education through CHED. That's where the term Teacher Jotham mentioned about the term
Yes.
Yes. Thank you so much. We can also accommodate one more, Teacher Carmencita Lopez. Go ahead.
Okay, good morning, everyone. For me, curriculum is the most important because curriculum is our framework and the basis of our instruction and our assessment. So without a curriculum, we have no clear direction on what to teach and what to check the learnings of our learners. So therefore, curriculum is just like a skeletal framework of our education. That's all. Thank you.
I appreciate the term skeletal framework. So without the framework, the system who cannot stand and cannot deliver. From Teacher Anna Therese.
Sorry, can I answer?
Yes, Teacher Grace, we can accommodate you later. Thank you.
Yes.
Teacher Anna Therese.
Yes, sir. Good morning po. Am I audible na po, sir?
Yes po, loud and clear.
Okay, for me, since most of the participants chose curriculum, I will choose assessment as a pivotal part of instruction, as it determines whether or not the goals of education are being met. And assessment affects decisions about grades, placement, advancement, instructional needs, even curriculum, and in some cases also, sir, funding. I think so. It's the most important because it says that curriculum is effective if the assessment is met. That's it.
That's how you can target the effectiveness of curriculum. That's very true. Teacher Anna? Another one to share? Meron pa po ba? Yung
Sir?
nag-raise ko kanina? Yes po. Teacher Grace, go ahead.
Yes, good morning everyone again. So for me, the urgently need to embrace, because for me it is instruction, because instruction varies and we have different strategies and techniques on how to deliver the curriculum that had been laid by our department. So it is already given. So it is up to the teachers on how are we going to improve, or how are we going to deliver it to our learners, or what are the different types of strategies we are going to apply depending on their level. And somehow assessment, it depends on, or I mean, assessment, it is the result, or assessment, it is the outcomes of how we teach, or what are the learners learned from our lessons, from our teaching. So I chose instruction, sir, because it varies each teacher, how are we going to deliver the lessons.
Thank you, Ma'am Grace. Hintayin lang po natin na maka-shift si Sir Roy sa isang device niya. Hold on lang po.
Hello, Ma'am Ria. Ma'am, may I be considered as co-host as well? Let me
Yes,
reshare
hold
my
on lang, sir.
material.
Hold on
Thank
lang.
you.
Okay na, Sir Roy. Hold on lang po. Naayos lang po ni Sir Roy yung device niya. Sir Roy, naka-co-host na po kayo. Dear teachers, hintayin lang po natin. Baka nag-shift si Sir Roy ng power source niya. In the meantime po, let me take this time while Sir Roy, we're waiting for Sir Roy, just to make a few announcements po regarding the tasks that we need to accomplish. So, una po kanina, remind ko po kayo regarding the attendance for session 4. So, make sure po that you have accomplished all the attendance links. And then po, of course, the submission of our assessment tool. So, yung assessment tool po natin, by now, we are on our 4th assessment task. I-accomplish po natin yun after this morning's synchronous session. After that po, kindly save it as a PDF file. So, isang file lang po yun. Di ba, you downloaded it as one Word file. So, sasagutan na po natin siya dun sa Word file na yun. And then po, save it as a PDF file using your name as, registered name as your file name. And then po, there is a submission bin that we put up on our FB group page. Dun po natin siya isa-submit once we're done. So again po, the deadline for submission is tomorrow po at 5 p.m. So to allow us time, of course, to fulfill our family and religious obligations for this Sunday, and as well as accomplish our errands before we face another work week tomorrow. In addition to that, we also have, of course, our evaluation, program evaluation tool. It is a Google form po, so we request that you kindly read the instructions po before you answer it, because you can answer it only once. So nandun din po yun sa ating FB group page, and it is another requirement, of course, before we can send your certificates. Now, regarding the certificates po, the individually registered participants, their certificates will be shipped to their addresses that they indicated when they registered for this program. Pero po yung ating mga participants from SDOs of Bigos, SDO Panabo City, and SDO Davao Occidental, their certificates will be sent to their respective division offices. So dun po natin sa division office, kukunin yung ating certificates. Now, let me clarify lang po, yung ating pong Facebook page, the basis po for accepting requests is the official list sent by the divisions. Kaya po dun po sa mga ibang nagre-request, tinatanong ko po kung saang SDO po sila so that I can double check po the list from the division. So, kung wala po yung name doon sa official list po na pinadala ng division, hindi po namin ina-accept doon sa Facebook page. But by all means, you can join the Zoom platform. So, inaalaw po namin, naka-open po siya. Wala po tayong waiting room sa ating Zoom platform. So, pwede po kayong mag-attend. But the certificates will only be issued to those whose names appear on the official list of the divisions. As of Friday po, kasi Friday afternoon, wala na po kaming updates na nakuha sa division offices. So, we're using the last list that they sent to us. So if by Monday po nag-update sila or nagbigay sila ng lista panibago, yun din po yung magiging basis namin for the issuance of certificates. As long as, of course, you fulfill all the requirements like the submission of the assessment tool, the accomplishment of the tasks, and also the program evaluation. So yun po yung ating mga requirements. So linilinaw ko lang po yun, that the basis for the issuance of certificates will be the list submitted by the division offices. For the individually registered participants po, sila po yung mga nagbayad ng sarili nilang registration fee and registered on their own. Their certificates will be shipped directly to them po in the addresses that they indicated in the registration. So the rest po, participants from the various divisions, they will be sent to your division offices. So yun po yung ating clarification. Ayan na po si Sir Roy. Hintayin lang po natin. Yung mga other questions po regarding that, kindly direct message me na lang po or mag-PM po kayo dun sa ating page or tech team so that I can respond to you. Thank you po. Sir Roy, okay na?
Ma'am Ria?
Okay po, I can hear you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am Ria, may we have an alternative? I sent the link through your cell phone number.
Okay
If
po.
possible, we can shift the co-hosting from your end.
Hold on, sir, ha.
Thank you, ma'am.
To my
Because open,
opo, phone po
I'm
or the messenger?
ma'am, cellphone number.
Wala pa ako nare-receive, sir. Pwede naman pong dito na lang sa Zoom chat or sa messenger, sir.
Hello, Ma'am Ria. I sent the chat box through the host for the link.
Hold on lang, sir, ah.
Yes, ma'am. Hello, Ma'am Ria. I also tried it via email just in case it would work better through the email. Thank you.
Yes, hold on lang, sir. Inaayos po ni Sir Jonathan. Okay lang po. Ayan na, sir. Okay na po.
Yehey! Yan talaga. Kailangang may plan A, B, C, D. All right. So my apologies, dear teachers, because of the weather. This morning we had the power interruption up to this time, and I prepared for the power bank as well as a power source for the Wi-Fi here at home. Both are working well except that for the laptop, it was drained immediately, so I need to shift from a laptop to a smartphone. So from here, we can already proceed with the succeeding slides. If I'm not mistaken, we ended with curriculum, instruction, and assessment. That's where we shifted. There. Okay, so this would already be our continuation. So for now, our arrangement would be through this mechanism so that we can complete our presentation with regard to curriculum, instruction, and assessment under the theme of contextualized learning approach as well as outcomes-based approach. Now, still about the pandemic, because it really made a great impact with regard to learning and teaching, especially for the basic education. The pandemic also revealed a lot of flaws on the part of education from the basic education up to the higher education. And also, it tested the capability of our health department. So remember Secretary Duque, what did it say? The current health emergency is putting heavy demands on the quality of online learning environment. Thus, we had our Google Meet, our Zoom, and other online tool. And in relation to that, what did it say under the next slide? The next slide mentioned about so for the next slide, please. Slide number 9 po muna. Thank you. Ayan, maraming salamat. High-stake assessment systems face significant accountability challenges in obtaining reliable measures of learning outcomes when students cannot attend examination in person. And not only that, there are popular pages in Facebook, if you can remember. Students are making fun of some of the requirements in their subject, like in their PE subject for their swimming lesson. I think you saw this post in Facebook. What did it say? The student was wearing actually his swimming attire as prescribed by the school. However, his swimming demonstration is done on top of his bed, pretending to be swimming and pretending to be doing different swimming strokes. Di po ba? Siyempre, maraming nag-react, maraming natuwa, marami ang tumawa ng todo dahil sa kanyang pinakitang kakayahang lumangoy sa ibabaw ng kanyang kama. But then, deep inside, it is also sending a message. Probably the student was not aware, but if you try to reflect about it, aside from the humor he intend to share to the audience, he also had presented the big question: is there still a justice with regard to teaching and learning because of the pandemic? Right? Probably in terms of instruction, with the teachers and their limitation to technology, their limitation to the preparation, whatever they do as they teach the lesson virtually or through the modules, is it enough that they can deliver it well? And the question is, can the learners be able to adapt and make sure that learn the essentials? Remember, after a few months, the Department of Education already went for the most essential learning competency, right? And from the most essential learning competency, the intention of the Department of Education is to reduce the number of competencies because of the limited number of meetings and the limited materials where the teachers can deliver the content. Thus, there's again a big shift on the part of our teachers. So the question, obtaining reliable measures of learning outcome. How sure are we that when the learners would answer the written work, that they answered that on their own? How sure are we that when the learners answer the exam, because the last quarter of academic year 2021 or 2019-2020, that was the last quarter, may exam pa yun. But in good faith, what did the schools do? In good faith, ipasagot pa rin sa mga bata that we have to give them the trust that they are still answering it on their own and not their siblings, not their parents. Similarly, under the performance task or performance checks or small tasks, that there are these outputs that have to be submitted by the learners. But then again, how reliable is our measure that would guarantee that the learning outcomes are the true learning outcomes delivered by our learners? Obviously, we are confident to claim that we cannot rely about it anymore because in the end, there are a lot of factors. So what did we do? We settled for the minimum, right? So may I ask the others, let's use our chat box. Let's ask the others and their school's approach, what did they do in terms of the written works and performance tasks that are required from our learners during the pandemic? What adjustments were done? Kindly share it to us. Since we need these requirements to determine their grade, what adjustments were done by the school considering the pandemic, considering the milk for the past 2 academic years? So let's read what have been shared through the chat box. Abangan po natin. So allow Sir Roy to start, especially the last quarter of 2019-2020, where exam is still required before the MELC provision and before the DepEd memo that for the following academic year 2020-2021, wala munang exam. What we did, performance-based ang naging exam namin, not the usual pencil and paper, meaning there are reasonable set of outputs that would be completed by the learners, and that is what they are going to submit. So the basis of score is more on the rubric type, so that there would be items that will be recorded that would come under the category performance task. So that's one adjustment. How about the others? May we know? You can share it through our group chat. In terms of adjustments made by your school because of the pandemic, how did you make adjustment in terms of requirements from the students, be it exam, written work, or performance task? Let's read it from our chat box. For those who would like to share. Okay, so while waiting from the responses of our participants, Teacher R. Jane. So Teacher R. Jane, go ahead and we'll read also other responses coming from our participants. Teacher R. Jane.
Good morning po to everyone. Good morning, sir.
Morning.
In our school po, in performance task, we give activities that use materials readily available at home. Right, for example, in grade 10 science, instead of giving them activities that we usually do inside the school, we give them activities that use materials available from the home, like yung pong simulation po ng plate tectonic boundaries. Instead of conducting it inside the laboratory, we use Graham cracker that represent the continental crust, and then yung pong kanilang favorite na fruit roll-up that represents the oceanic crust, and then yung pong nagre-represent naman po ng mantle. So naisip po namin pwede pong i-compare yun kay star margarine or yung pong margarine po na ditakal sa palengke. So ganun po, nagbibigay po kami ng activities na pwede po nila i-conduct sa bahay, and then after that, para po ma-ensure na sila po yung gumagawa po ng activities, I allow them to make video presentation. Yun po kung saan ina-explain din po nila yung materials needed, the procedure, and then the result, where they also answer the guide questions given, and then sinesend po nila yon sa amin pong Google Classroom. Yun po.
Thank you so much, Teacher R. Jane. Very effective and very creative, resourceful approach so that learners can still go on with the topic and lesson with the use of this locally available materials. And not only that, they can also do it at home. And we also appreciate that there are still a mechanism that you have proposed to be able to check on the outputs that are really being done or being accomplished by the learners. We learned something from your sharing. Thank you so much. And Teacher Cyrus mentioned about answer sheets to really check and see that the required things to be answered by the learners are accomplished. It is actually used for monitoring. Teacher Jotham mentioned about the project-based or output-based, which is connected to outcomes-based approach we have today. And then Teacher Catherine mentioned about adjusted the time of passing of students' output. So there is the consideration with regard to time element, not so particular with the setting of deadline. Okay, yes, like setting or giving deductions for being late and so on. Teacher Jun An mentioned about in our school, we introduced the blended learning online and modular. In doing the performance task, we let pupils send videos with corresponding rubric. Short video clip, right? Documentation that would prove that they did it, they performed it, and that they were assisted by parents maybe in terms of the project completion. And then Teacher Sherlyn, we provided supplementary materials to enhance learning. That's very true. Because if they will solely rely on all the pages coming from the module, a lot of our students would not read all the content, but would rather go immediately to what they need to answer as part of the evaluation, right? Teacher Sherlyn, supplementary. Teacher Mylene, learning assessment sheet that can be brought home. Teacher Grace, the performance task is that they adjust, make it through sending pictures. That's true. Being done at home, videos, group chat where they can show to the class, but only those who have internet connection or enough data. And of course, there is that rubric that would justify authentic learning outcomes. Now, Teacher Sherlyn mentioned about the use of technology for those who can access it, even their phones, just like what Sir Roy is doing right now with regard to their output. Teacher Uzel Batino Tobianosa, we created quizzes and assessments through Google Forms so that the links are the ones that would be shared. And so with supplementary videos. Blended modular, we used Messenger, we let them video themselves to perform the task. So it follows that from the sharing of everyone, there were some immediate alternatives that were done. Teacher Marietta, written assessment to be answered at home. And parents, that's true, parents would claim and parents would submit. Teacher Saidamen, group chats, very true. Thank you so much. Now, going back, if we are to ask how reliable are the learning outcomes, probably we cannot claim it that it's 100%. But the idea of having indicators or proofs that there are evidences of learning, at the very least, we are very successful about it. So we move on to the next slide. For slide number 10, here is the question. How can science education equip citizens with scientific skills to understand and cope with the pandemic? So the question is more for the Department of Education, but I composed another version of this question that would be shown through the next slide. And here's our next slide. Here, that's where I will look forward for your answer. How can science subjects in the elementary, junior, and senior high school equip learners with scientific skills to understand and cope with the pandemic? So that is our question. We can accommodate those who will raise their hand and those can answer through the chat box. Again, whether it's elementary, junior, or senior high school science, how can science subjects equip learners with scientific skills to understand and cope with the pandemic. So let's wait for their responses. So that is a very challenging, essential question for everyone. So let's have 3 minutes for our participants to compose their answer in relation to the question. May I suggest that you try to go back to your lessons on science that would be your reference in answering the question. All right, a lot of responses came in already. Teacher then mentioned about instilling curiosity so that it becomes consistent with all our learners to be curious, inquisitive, and then the learning would follow. Meanwhile, we have teacher Charlene through hands-on, minds-on activity that they can learn different activities provided there. Same time, have fun. Learning is fun. Teacher Leonardo, science subject, is taught through remote teaching approach. Learners are learning through showing ownership of their answer and learned skills. They take responsibility, independent learning. I agree with that. Teacher Ellen, in our school, we use the blended approach so that they can answer their modules and we can also give supplementary materials. While Teacher Marilu mentioned about learners to innovate and expound their knowledge in experimenting for them to be more interested. So as you can see, what I am reading are already the different development of skills that with our subject and with the teacher's initiative, even if there is pandemic, this very important science skills and life skills can still be developed by our learners, even if they are at home learning virtually, even if they are at home reading through their printed modules. Let learners be exposed to problem-solving activities in relation to real-life situations. Teacher Samira created a video of a particular lesson and they can send it through their group chat so that all classmates can watch and learn from it. All right, very good. So in relation to this, for the presentation, that particular slide is already highlighting the significance of continuous learning and development of skills. Not only skills related to scientific method or science skills, but skills that are useful even after a student would graduate in elementary or basic education. That's why we call them as life skills. That's why teacher from Malativas National High School, if they are exposed, learners are exposed to problem-solving activities, especially under real-life situation. There. So it just affirms that teachers are very creative and resourceful. Despite the challenge, teachers can complain, teachers can give a lot of comments, teachers can show their irritation, and sometimes they even really are exhausted, and still they would continue. So the answer to this question, how can science subject equip learners with scientific skills to understand and cope with the pandemic? They were well elaborated through your personal experiences. And Alat even mentioned that it is not only limited to scientific skills, but more on life skills. And because of the activities and the materials, it continues. Thank you so much. So now, going to our next slide. For number 11, I suppose. Then followed by slide number 12. Thank you. So this is sort of a homework already, okay? But you just have to note it down. You can take a picture of these 3 instructions, because some of these have already been shared through your answers through the chat box. Only that it is asking for a particular topic. Like I mentioned this earlier, choose a topic from your teaching load for this current academic year wherein there was an opportunity that you have mentioned about the pandemic. And then from your lesson proper, let's say from the content of your teaching guide or lesson plan, which part of your lesson plan did the topic on the pandemic was raised or mentioned? And for the third one, what specific skill or skills were tapped and assessed in the lesson and activity? Why am I asking this for our participants? Because first, the topic on pandemic is very timely. Second, both teachers and learners can relate to it because we all have experienced it. And second, we can see how skillful are our teachers in integrating social issues as part of their lesson that is already under the contextualized approach. And as part of our outcomes base, we can require our learners an output, or we can require our learners to answer a question or a guide question in relation to the topic with emphasis on the pandemic. So first, there is the output, because your intention is learners to be measured in terms of their communication skill, probably through the writing of an essay or a journal, or others may opt to share that by reading it orally for the class. Second, the intention when they read their essay or they share their essay, probably through a blog or through the group chat, we can see how will they use their knowledge about the pandemic in relation to the topic. Let's say the topic is about acceleration and my subject is physics. I related acceleration through the manner how the virus spread in a particular community. So that is already a way of integrating it. The time, the number of persons, the distance in between, and at the same time, how long will the virus last? So because of that connection, I can already expect my learners to utilize the term acceleration, to utilize the term space or the distance, to utilize the term velocity. And the moment I ask them to complete their task and I ask them to share, there are a lot of aspects that I would like to check. First, is their usage of the term acceleration, velocity, time, and even displacement appropriate as they read their essay? Second, is their background about pandemic also correct? So the outcomes-based approach there is through their essay and the way they constructed their idea. And then I made it contextualized because from a physics lesson on acceleration, I asked them to share their experience and their background about it. And from there, when the time to share their output is already conducted, then both the learners and the teacher can have a clear gauge of evidences of learning. So this is not new. The two approaches mentioned is not actually new. It's just a manner of planning it well and doing it once in a while. Once in a while because you still have to condition your students of this kind of format. But the moment they are used to it, it is already a walk in the park on their end if you will allow them to do this kind of activity once every quarter. So those are already mechanisms for you that in terms of outcomes-based approach as well as contextualized approach, that it can be delivered under the basic education context. Okay, so let's move on to our next slide, number 13. Now, the beauty of that, if we are consistent with the outcomes-based approach, is that there is always an opportunity to do critical reflection, especially on our subject in science, and more broadly on STEM curriculum. STEM curriculum because that is the um, more preferred strand with reference to the academic track for our learners. That in terms of the needed knowledge and skills, especially you mentioned about global, global learners, such as the pandemic and the climate change emergency. There is always the opportunity for the learners to do their research and to expand their knowledge. And if the science teacher is also critical about it, there is always the opportunity to check misinformation. Example, if learners are given the opportunity to share their resources or references, classmates and the teacher can already check with them if they are using reliable resources. That is to avoid fake news and misinformation. That is how critical reflection and critical thinking would continue to be developed. Moving on to the next slide. Now, more of the contextual approach. What do researchers say about contextual approach? Learning in the classroom will be more meaningful if students get experience what they are learning, not only knowing it. That's why earlier your co-participants mentioned about allowing learners to use materials that are available at home as alternative. And from there, they can proceed with their own home-based experiment or home-based activity. So according to this author, that is how contextual approach can be used to empower more our learners. Thus, for the next slide, these are some considerations. Every time we plan for our lesson, we see to it that our approach is localized and contextualized, especially in choosing activities. We can always choose activities that are found in the internet and from Western or foreign references. Well, let's do our best to have a local version of this activity. Local version, let's say, through examples. Local version through scenarios or environmental concerns. So instead of citing volcanic eruption from other countries, we make use of volcanic eruptions that are recently experienced by some communities, probably in Albay, in Batangas, so that learners can relate more of volcanoes in the Philippines. If we talk about flood, if we talk about landslide, those that are happening recently, so that they can relate to it. So aside from that, we have to consider the background of our learners. If we talk about, if we talk about, thank you. If we talk about um, senior high school learners, we also have to consider their strand. If their strand is STEM, there is a deeper approach and a more challenging version of our activity. But if our learners are from ABM and UMS, then let's continue to consider their projection of business development and promotion, as well as advertisement. So if we talk about students from GAS or from students from TechVoc, let's also consider what career would they have after TechVoc in senior high school. And equally important is to relate it to their community. If your students are within a fishing community, then let's cite examples in line with the work their parents have, or what they often experience as a part of the fishing community during typhoon, during summertime, during El Nino and La Nina. These are ways for the teacher to consider localization and contextualization, because the teacher is sensitive of what learners are exposed into. Okay? So if learners within your community or within your city, halimbawa city dahil marami sa inyong mga national high schools are within the city, therefore social issues like traffic, social issues like waste management, social issues like learners or youth into exposed to vices, and so on. And if you want it to more, if you want it to have it more close to close to their hearts, like what's happening in the school, like how is the school managing the canteen as of the moment with a good number of students? How is the school managing the waste of learners on a daily basis? Those are so many examples on how can we make sure that in terms of lesson planning and delivery, these approaches are doable. Thus, for the next slide, it will remind us the following. Other journals will tell us that learning using contextual approach foster pleasure, increases activity, and improves learning achievement. So I read it here from the chat box. Teacher Michelle mentioned about hands-on activities where materials, they can access it through their surroundings or community. Localized materials is according to teacher Sally, real life situations. When you say real life situations, sometimes we give them role playing where they have the opportunity to be the engineer. They have the opportunity to be the local officials. They have the opportunity to be the garbage collectors or the owner of junk shops and so on. Because if they have special roles, the more that they will own the situation because they are given the opportunity to be that person. Okay, giving experiments that are doable at home. During the pandemic, the learners use the localized materials that were available in their homes. You see? So, I think you mentioned about your topic. Teacher Cindy from Panabo City mentioned about respiratory and circulatory system. That's very true. So that is under junior high school. I think that is on grade 9 science, if I am not mistaken. That is a very appropriate topic in relation to the pandemic. Thank you so much. Your sharing are very rich. Then moving on for our next slide. So here it is. Since we still observe different modalities like the face-to-face, the modular, and the online modality, we always have to consider the skills that we need to develop among our learners. And the skills here are some examples. The communication, critical thinking, and problem-solving skill for them to be developed and to be innovative, and they know how to collaborate. So let's not consider group work or group activity as something that is old school. In fact, because of group work or group activity, special skills are being developed among students, the collaboration. And with that, they can continue to develop this even if they are at home. They can continue to develop this even if they only listen to their teacher virtually, or even if our learners would read pages from their module. And don't forget, since our schools have our own identity, since our schools have our own trademark, we should not forget that we connect it to our school's vision and mission. How does character makes a person be promoted when they answer the activity on respiratory system, when they answer their activity about landslide, when they conduct their experiment about um, on waste segregation and the like. So with this, we target the standards, we target the minimum, and as expected, when they are to prepare their output, they are ready for the output presentation because the skills that they need have been prepared when learners were asked to answer assessment and when learners are asked to do preparatory requirements. So as you can see, if we talk about the big task or the culminating performance task, prior activities are required from the learners because there are specific skills that they need to develop. So if they need the corresponding communication skill because they need to talk to an audience, if they need the communication skill because they need to do a write-up, then communication skill activity are also provided as part of the um, scaffolded activities. So teacher Feby mentioned about harmful and helpful effect of materials. That's it when students are exposed. So for the next slide, it will also remind us about another teaching material. For example, this picture, the message is very clear. There is no planet B. So this would be our last activity for this session, dear teachers. From the picture shown on the screen with the caption, there is no planet B, I want you to think of a topic or think of a lesson. And from the topic or lesson, I want you to message through the chat box the topic or the lesson plus what skill can be developed with regard to this learning material. Okay, so for example, ecosystem, then what skill development can be shared with our learners? Go ahead. Teacher Elaine, ecosystem. So what skill would that be? Is it critical thinking? Teacher Mylene, ecosystem. Teacher Florenda, conservation of ecosystem. Teacher Wendy, earth systems. Teacher Artemio, biodiversity. Teacher Leonardo, biodiversity, environmental protection. Teacher Kim, biodiversity. From Teacher Cyrus, biodiversity, respect to other forms of life. Teacher Rodora, ecosystem, conservation, biodiversity, sphere interaction, lithosphere, atmosphere, hydrosphere, problem-solving skill. Thank you, Teacher Catherine. There you are. So As you can see from a single picture, a lot of possible topics can use this picture to develop creative thinking, ecosystem, and biodiversity. So this is just one example, a simple learning material, and there are a lot of topics that can utilize this, and it can also be related to a special social issue. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. Next po. There you are. So I shared this picture also that would promote social issue. Happy Earth Day! And with that, we can see other characters together with the person holding the seedling. What is this all about? I shared this one with the intention that we can have our lesson be directly connected to social issue and what is currently being witnessed by our learners. Reforestation, global warming, but how about those with cameras in front? Do not to be publicized. Exactly. So I wish, my intention is a topic in science, pakitang tao, tama po, a topic in science where learners can share their insight with regard to election, with regard to publicity, with regard to being critical thinkers when we choose our leaders. Okay? So with this picture, the outcomes-based approach is well observed and also with contextualized approach because of social issues on politics. There you are. So moving on to the next slide. It says that teachers in teaching should also pay attention to the learning styles. Through Mamria and our technical team of i.LEAD, I will share with them our learning material on learning style. Okay, so next slide. There, the file will give you learning style inventory. And in terms of consideration of learning style, you can use a survey to determine among your students what is the learning style that is prominent. Next slide. There. Because in line with the learning style, if we are aware of the learning style, then we can have the inventory. Okay. The last two videos will conclude our session. Let's have the first one. I'm sorry, ma'am. I think the link was already cut because of the shared material. Hindi na nakalink directly from the laptop. Anyway, the video will talk about an applicant and the employer. And from the interview, the first session talks about the applicant with limited communication skill because it was not well developed when the applicant was in school. Meanwhile, for the second video, it talks about the applicant wherein while she was in school, they were given a lot of opportunity to um, have their chance to speak in front of people, in front of classmates, in front of teachers. That's why during the interview, the employer was impressed that she can deliver well and she was able to share her skills and background. So those were the two videos. Anyway, I will update the reference material so that you can also access the said videos. Okay, moving on. For the next slide. So this is in relation to the learning style and the output. Okay, for our next slide. Moreover, contextual learning based on learning style will encourage the students to make connection between their knowledge and application in daily life in accordance to their learning style. Because if their learning style is well matched and triggered every time there are lessons and activities, these would be well maximized and other skills would be developed. Thus, to continue with the next slide, here are our references, our dear teachers, so that we would acknowledge all our sources. So with that, I thank everyone for their wonderful participation, and my apologies for the technical difficulty. Anyway, more resources will be shared so that you can go back to what has been shared by Sir Roy. Okay, so this is the presentation in line with contextualized approach and outcomes-based approach. So with this, a blessed Sunday, and let's continue pursuing our mission as educators. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Sir Roy. Despite the challenges sa kuryente, no, nawawala walang kuryente sila, Sir Roy, actually. And despite the technical difficulties, I'm sure no po nag-enjoy tayo and marami din tayong na-pick up from this morning's session with Sir Roy. So meron po ba tayong questions while we still have Sir Roy with us habang may battery pa po siya? You can use the raise hand icon or type your questions sa chat box po. And like all of the other presentations, we will also share Sir Roy's presentation in a bit po on our FB group page. It's for everyone to access. For those of you who have also experienced some interruptions in this morning's presentation, you can access the YouTube video on our FB group page. So kompleto po yun. You can just go back to it po while doing your chores or having lunch or while you're answering your assessment tool. Pwede po natin balikan. May question po ba tayo?
None so far, Doc.
Wala naman po tayong tanong. Gusto na nating mag-brunch, no, for Sunday and go back to our errands. Sir Roy, thank you very much po for this morning session. And of course, thank you to our dear teachers for spending a few hours of your Sunday morning with us in order to complete all the 4 sessions for this 3-day program. Maraming salamat po for attending and very actively participating in our session. Few reminders lang po, ulitin ko yung mga reminders natin, of course, is the accomplishment of the assessment tool. So hanggang bukas po ng 5 p.m. Regarding the assessment tool po, you can submit it through the submission bin on the FB group page. Para po sa mga participants ng Davao Occidental SDO na hindi pa po na-accept sa FB group page, mag-update daw po si Sir Winnie tomorrow. Apologies lang daw po because some of the names were submitted also very late, so hindi na po niya naihabol. But anyways po, I forwarded him the link ng Zoom, kaya po naka-attend po kayo. So when he updates the list po, the ones in the list, in the most updated list, will also receive certificates po for this program. And then, of course, the accomplishment of the pre-test and post-test self-assessment. So yung pre-test po, dapat nasagutan na po natin yon before the start of session 1. So this time po, after session 4, you can now answer post-test self-assessment. There is also an evaluation tool. Google form po yun. You can access it also, but you can access it only once. Kaya po basahin po natin mabuti yung ating instructions before clicking submit. Then the attendance, of course, for the 4 sessions. Deadline of submission of assessment po is tomorrow, Monday po, 5 p.m. to allow you time to attend to your Sunday errands and your obligations. And then you can complete it po tonight and submit it tomorrow. Okay, before the start of another hectic work week for everyone. On behalf of i.LEAD po and the i.LEAD technical team, thank you very much, dear teachers, for your participation to our 3-day program. And we hope to have you again in our future activities. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you so much, i.LEAD.
Thank you very much po, dear teachers.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you po.
Pwede po group picture sana.
Thank you, Mom.
Group picture.
Group picture po, please.
Hold on lang po, hold on lang po. Hold on lang po.
Thank you po.
Request po ng group picture daw tayo, dear teachers, habang naka-Sunday best po tayo or kahit nakapantulog po tayo, pwedeng-pwede po yan. Basta focus lang po natin dun sa sa face lang po siguro. I will switch to gallery view and take screenshots of the gallery po. Post po natin ulit to. May nakapost po ng orientation pero baka hindi po tayo kompleto. Baka mas marami po tayo today. Okay na po? Ready na po ba tayo? Okay, first gallery po. Ayan, second gallery naman po tayo. Smile lang po tayo kasi medyo marami po. Ayan. Hold on po. Ayan. Next gallery po tayo. Next gallery. Last gallery na po. Ayan. Thank you very much, dear teachers. Again, God bless everyone. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. And we hope to see you back po in our future activities. If you're interested po to join our activities are posted on our FB page, i.LEAD FB page po. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you po once again.
Thank you, I.LEAD.
Thank you
Thanks,
po.
thanks, thanks. Thank you po. Thank you so much.
Sunday,
A
everyone.
blessed Sunday, everyone.